Hello, my name is Kristina Herbert, and I am the Chair of Young Women in Bio in Southern California, which is based in the San Diego area. As part of our Young Women in Bio online series, I want to follow up on the previous module that I narrated, in which I define new vocabulary that has been introduced in the era of COVID-19. Specifically, the terms social distancing, self-quarantine, and isolation were discussed. So I explained the meaning of each term and how they are each different. So if you haven't watched that module number 3, I strongly suggest watching it before this one, as I will refer back to those terms frequently. And there might be some pop quizzes. So in that module, I explained that the terms social distancing, self-quarantine, and isolation are best practices to keep yourself, your household, and your community safe and healthy. So now, in this module, finally, I want to provide a real-life story, and this story has real-life consequences. This story takes place in South Korea, a country that is often used as an example of just how well the virus can be controlled when proper containment measures are taken. But the story of patient 31 is a story of what happens when these best practice behaviors are not implemented. So let's get started. So as I just said in the intro, South Korea is a country often used as an example of just how well the virus can be controlled when proper containment measures are taken. Containment measures include having people who test positive for the virus isolated. Remember from Module 3, that's so they can't spread the virus further. Then everyone who has contacted that person must be identified. This is called contact tracing. And finally, all of their contacts who may or may not be sick go into quarantine. Remember, quarantine is for people who suspect they have been exposed to the virus. So these types of containment measures, of course, require extremely effective testing so that positive cases can be isolated early. So South Korea had its first documented case of COVID-19 on January 20th. The first case is centered around Daegu City, and many of the first people diagnosed were members of the same church. So patient 31 was in Daegu City during this time, and she is a member of the Shincheonji Church. And we don't know how widely known it was, or specifically whether patient 31 knew that the epicenter of the virus in South Korea was in Daegu City, or that it was primarily members of her church that were infected. But let's assume she and others did know at that time that the epicenter of the virus was in South Korea, in Daegu, and that it was primarily members of the Shincheonji Church that were infected. So let's take a pop quiz using that assumption. What mitigation measures should patient 31 have taken? I'll give you 5 seconds. If patient 31 was not aware that she had been exposed, she could have minimally practiced social distancing and avoided large gatherings. If she did suspect she had been exposed, she could have self-quarantined. Okay, so now it's February 9th and 10 days since the first documented case of COVID-19 in South Korea. And what suddenly happens? Well, patient 39 develops a fever on February 9th. So let's see how much you remember from module number 3 and take a pop quiz. Upon developing a fever, what measures could patient 31 have taken to avoid infecting others? 5 seconds. At this point, we think it is likely that patient 31 knows there are COVID-19 cases in South Korea and many are within her church. So upon developing a fever, she should have definitely self-isolated. Next, on February 15th, patient 31 goes to a hospital, and they suggest COVID-19 or SARS coronavirus 2 testing. So what does patient 31 do? And don't worry, this is not a quiz because I'm not sure anybody could have predicted what she would do. Instead of getting tested, patient 31 went to a buffet lunch with a friend at a hotel. In her defense, in an interview with a local newspaper, the woman denied that doctors had advised her then to be tested. However, as her symptoms worsened, doctors say they once again advised her to be tested. Finally, on February 17th, she finally went to yet another hospital for the test. Patient 31's case is a cautionary tale. Before her, South Korea's containment measures were excellent. Due to an early and robust testing program, they were able to isolate patients. Remember from module number 3, I said that isolation is used for those that know they are infected, and South Korea implemented this. With early and rigorous testing, they were able to trace all these patients' contacts to then quarantine them. If you remember, quarantine is used for people that suspect they may have been exposed. And this graphic shows patients 1 through 31. Let's focus initially on the first 30 patients. South Korea was able to trace all of the contacts of these first 30 patients. In some cases, contacts came down with the virus, others did not. And many of those first 30 patients were contacts of the previous patients. Now look at patient 31. Patient 31 does not know when she contracted the virus, but the number of people she came in contact with was more than 2 times that of any other patient, as she clearly was not implementing mitigation measures even after she displayed symptoms. As we saw in the previous graphic, the number of people patient 31 contacted was 1,160. She visited her church at least twice during the story, and once after showing symptoms. While she was not the first member of the Shincheonji church to be infected, she very likely contributed to the more than 5,000 that were infected from the Shincheonji church in the province of Daegu and other nearby provinces. I hope that this story helps you realize and provides a real-life story to demonstrate that our actions that we're taking now in this era of COVID-19 have real-life consequences. I imagine that patient 31 really cares deeply about her friend she ate lunch with or the other members of her church. And while these graphics show the number of infections that resulted, remember the case fatality rate has been estimated to be on the order of 3%. So of those 5,000 or so cases at her church, it's likely that maybe 150 or so may have died. So please stay well and protect yourself and your community. Thank you for joining us, and stay safe, everyone. We're all in this together. And look for more virtual events and important information at womeninbio.org/page/YWIB online. We're constantly developing more content and hope to present it to you as quickly as we make it. Thanks so much. Stay safe, everyone.